The first survey flags appeared on a Monday. Bright orange ribbons tied to thin stakes, running in a straight line through the south edge of Ethan Mercer's soybean field like someone had drawn a wound across the land. He noticed them before sunrise while checking irrigation lines. At first he thought county drainage markers. Then he saw where they went. Straight through 60 acres his family had farmed for 3 generations. He pulled one stake from the ground. Another. Then found a metal sign posted near the gravel road. Notice of preliminary acquisition. Midwest Freight Rail Expansion Corridor. Ethan read it twice. Then once more. Behind him, the field moved softly in the dawn wind, rose dark and healthy after recent rain. His father had planted part of that ground. His grandfather had broken horses on the original 40 before buying the adjoining 20 years later. Every fence line held family labor. Every acre had history layered beneath it. And now a printed sign called it corridor. By breakfast, Daniel Mercer was angry in the old-fashioned way, quiet enough to be dangerous. They never spoke to us. Ethan set the notice on the table. Apparently this counts. Daniel read the legal language, jaw tightening. Preliminary route designation. Negotiation process forthcoming. Eminent domain authority possible if voluntary sale, terms failed. They picked the best ground, Daniel said. Of course they had. Flat approach. Existing grade nearby. Efficient line geometry. Corporate maps loved land for reasons families hated. By noon, 2 white pickups rolled into the lane. Men in clean boots stepped out with clipboards and measured politeness. The taller one introduced himself. Greg Tanner, land acquisition consultant for Midwest Freight. He offered a hand. Ethan ignored it. You put flags in my field. We're initiating route communication with affected owners. Daniel snorted. After staking it first? Tanner kept smiling professionally. This corridor would bring regional economic benefit. It'll bring steel through our soybeans, Ethan said. Tanner opened a folder. They were prepared to discuss compensation based on market averages, relocation of access roads, and transition assistance. Ethan looked at the first number, then handed it back. That wouldn't buy this county road. It reflects current AG valuations. It reflects that you don't understand farms. Tanner's smile thinned. If agreement cannot be reached, statutory procedures exist. Meaning eminent domain. Meaning if persuasion failed, law might do the lifting. After they left, Daniel kicked the porch step hard enough to regret it. You can't beat railroads. Ethan watched the pickups disappear. Maybe not the railroad. He looked toward the tracks a mile east. But schedules. The old East Line had once hauled grain daily. Now it mostly handled freight reroutes and seasonal traffic, but expansion plans would make it active again. A single choke point crossing served county roads for miles. Daniel followed his gaze. No. Ethan said nothing. That usually meant yes. The next week became meetings. County board hearing. Public comment session. Engineering presentation full of colored maps and phrases like optimized logistics efficiency. Neighbors sympathized until they learned the line missed their own acres. Then sympathy softened into practicality. Mark Jensen found Ethan outside the machine shed after one hearing. Maybe take the money, Mark said carefully. For 60 acres? For peace. Ethan wiped grease from his hands. Peace for who? Mark had no answer ready. At the county session, Ethan spoke plainly. That land drains 3 lower parcels, supports crop rotation across the north half, and connects our machinery access. You're not taking acreage. You're breaking an operating farm. Some applauded. Most just wanted the meeting over. The board thanked him and moved on. 3 days later, another envelope arrived. Offer of voluntary purchase. Higher number. Same insult. Daniel paced the kitchen. They'll wear us down. Maybe. You got a plan? Ethan looked out the window toward harvest-ready wheat on another parcel, then toward the distant rail line. Yes. Harvest began early that year. Neighbors ran combines from dawn until lights came on. Ethan serviced his own machine carefully, fuel filters, belts, bearings, tires, hydraulic lines. More carefully than necessary. Daniel noticed. You tuning that for wheat or war? For reliability. That means war. Ethan didn't deny it. The combine was massive, older but maintained, header removed for transport width. 30,000 pounds of practical refusal. On Thursday, certified letters arrived confirming formal condemnation review in 30 days. That night, Ethan slept 4 hours. Before dawn Friday, he drove the combine out of the shed. Daniel stood in the yard with coffee and disbelief. You really doing this? You said they'd wear us down. I said railroad, not jail. Ethan climbed the ladder into the cab. They can negotiate faster than they can tow. The machine roared to life. He rolled slowly down the county road, amber flashers blinking in the dark. People noticed. Farmers always notice a combine moving before sunrise. By the time he reached the east crossing, 2 pickups had already pulled over to watch. The tracks cut across a shallow rise between cornfields and gravel shoulders. Ethan turned carefully, aligned the machine, then drove straight onto the rails and stopped. Engine idling. Header trailer parked behind. The combine sat across both tracks like a steel barn on wheels. Mark Jensen arrived 10 minutes later, truck door hanging open. You've lost your mind. Maybe. A train comes through here at 9. Then they should call the rail company. By 7:30, 3 more trucks lined the road. Phones came out. Photos first. Then videos. Then live streams. By 8, county deputies arrived. They approached cautiously, hats in hand, because local law knew the difference between criminals and neighbors pushed too far. Deputy Collins looked up at Ethan in the cab. You need to move. Need the rail company to move their route. This isn't how permits work. No, Ethan said. This is how attention works. Collins rubbed his forehead. Behind him, more vehicles arrived. Then a local reporter. Then 2 rail employees in orange vests speaking urgently into radios. The crossing lights remained dark. No train yet, but the schedule window was closing. Daniel pulled up last, climbed from his truck, and stared at the scene. Then at his son. Then at the tracks. You always were stubborn. Genetics. Daniel almost smiled. At 8:42 a.m., black SUV with Midwest Freight logos slid to a stop in gravel dust. Greg Tanner stepped out furious for the first time since they met. This is unlawful interference with commerce. Ethan leaned from the cab window, and taking 60 acres lawfully felt better somehow. Tanner looked at the growing crowd, the cameras, the reporter already recording. Then back at the combine blocking the line. A horn sounded faintly in the distance. Train, still miles away, but coming. Tanner's expression changed. Because for the first time since the flags appeared, the schedule belonged to Ethan. The horn sounded again, closer this time, long and low across the Iowa morning. Everyone at the crossing heard it. The deputies straightened. Tanner turned sharply toward the tracks. The reporter moved closer, camera raised higher. Ethan stayed in the cab, hands resting calmly on the wheel, engine idling steady beneath him. Deputy Collins stepped forward again. Ethan, train control says it's reducing speed, but you need to clear the line now. Route papers first. This isn't a bargaining table. It is today. Collins looked at Daniel. Talk to him. Daniel folded his arms. You talk to the railroad. A few people laughed nervously. The train horn sounded a 3rd time. Then the locomotive appeared far down the line, slowing hard, lights bright in the morning haze. It was still a safe distance away, but the sight of it changed everything. Because now this wasn't theoretical. It was public and expensive. Greg Tanner stepped aside, phone pressed to his ear, speaking fast. The black SUV's second passenger, older, sharper suit, no introduction needed, got out and approached the deputies first. Then Ethan. He looked up at the combine. Mr. Mercer, I'm David Lang, Regional Counsel for Midwest Freight. Congratulations. Lang ignored that. This protest has made your point. Move the machine, and we'll schedule expedited negotiations. Ethan shook his head once. You already scheduled those. 30 days after condemnation notice. Lang's jaw tightened. The train is carrying time-sensitive freight. So is my farm. The locomotive crawled nearer, braking to a full stop several hundred yards short of the crossing. Steel shrieked softly. The crowd grew. County residents parked along both roads. Farmers stood beside pickups drinking coffee like they had arrived for a fair no one advertised. Phones recorded everything. Mark Jensen leaned near Daniel. This might actually work. Daniel didn't look at him. It already is. Lang tried again. What do you want? Ethan answered immediately. Reroute review. That's substantial. So is 60 acres. Anything else? Independent drainage study. Guaranteed machinery access if any corridor touches boundary land. And written suspension of condemnation proceedings during review. Lang glanced toward Tanner, who looked ill. That requires authorization. Ethan pointed gently down the tracks. So does stopping trains. Lang made 3 calls in 12 minutes. The kind of calls people make only when normal procedure has failed publicly. At 9:27 a.m., he returned with a printed temporary memorandum from the SUV's portable setup and an emailed authorization on a tablet. He read aloud. Midwest Freight would suspend active acquisition actions for 90 days, commission alternative route engineering review, and meet with Mercer family representatives within 5 business days. No admission of wrongdoing. No guarantee of final route change. Ethan listened carefully, then asked one question. Signed authority? Lang showed the digital signature from corporate headquarters. Real enough. Deputy Collins exhaled. So, Ethan looked at Daniel. His father gave the smallest nod. That was enough. Ethan climbed down from the cab, took the document, read every line himself, then signed acknowledgement, not agreement. He climbed back in. The combine engine rose. Slowly, deliberately, he reversed off the rails. The crowd stepped back as 30,000 pounds of stubbornness rolled clear. The crossing opened. The locomotive crept forward minutes later, engineer leaning out the side window long enough to stare at Ethan like he'd never forget the face. Neither would the county. By noon, the video was everywhere. Farmer blocks train overland dispute. News vans arrived too late for the best footage, but not too late for interviews. Ethan gave none. Daniel gave one sentence. They should have knocked first. The next week, negotiations looked very different. No polished assumptions. No low offers. No talk of affected owners. Now there were engineers, hydrologists, county supervisors, attorneys, and route maps spread across real tables. The independent study confirmed what Ethan had said from the beginning. Taking the 60 acres would sever drainage patterns, increase flooding risk on adjoining parcels, and impair equipment movement enough to reduce the viability of the remaining farm. Alternative routes existed. They cost more. That was the true issue, not possibility. Price. Public attention made price easier for the railroad to swallow than another crossing incident. 32 days after the combine protest, Midwest Freight announced a revised alignment. The new route shifted east along underused industrial ground and an abandoned service corridor before reconnecting north of the Mercer boundary. Longer by less than a mile. More expensive by several million. But off Ethan's farm. The condemnation notice was withdrawn. Formal letter. Stamped. Final. Daniel read it twice at the kitchen table. Then handed it to Ethan. I was wrong. About what? You can beat a railroad. Ethan shook his head. No. He looked out the window toward the saved south field. You can beat people who think no one will stand in front of one. Harvest came clean that fall. Combines rolled across all 60 acres the company had nearly labeled corridor. Soybean yields were strong. Drainage held through 2 heavy rains. The farm worked exactly as it always had, because it remained whole. Neighbors treated Ethan differently now. Not dramatically, just enough. Mark Jensen stopped by during unloading and leaned against the grain truck. Crazy thing, he said. What? I almost told you to take the money. You did tell me. Mark smiled. Then it's good you ignored me. Even Deputy Collins came by later with a pie from his wife and a warning wrapped as a joke. Next time protest with signs. No guarantees, Ethan said. Late one evening after the last trucks left, Ethan drove the combine to the hill overlooking the rail line. He shut it down and listened. In the distance, a freight train moved along the new corridor, lights cutting across land that wasn't his. Below him, his 60 acres lay dark and undisturbed, rose intact beneath the stars. Daniel climbed up beside him. You know what everyone's saying? I try not to. They say you parked a combine on the tracks and stopped a railroad. Ethan looked over the field. They're wrong. Daniel waited. I parked it, Ethan said. They stopped themselves. The wind moved through the stubble. Far below, steel wheels kept rolling. Just not through the Mercer farm.